My husband's grandma mistook the gas pedal for the brake and drove up over the curb onto the sidewalk and through the window of a bank. That was the last day she drove. I'm not sure if it was her own decision, the Department of Motor Vehicles in her state, her insurance company, or her daughter, but she never drove again. And with that, she not only lost the ability to drive, but she lost her freedom. So we're going to spend some time talking about driving in retirement. This isn't necessarily all about what's going to happen on day one of retirement, but it's something for us to think about because we're going to make plans for our future, for our next chapter. And keeping in mind what happens to us when they take away the keys, I think is something that will help us have a more happy and fulfilled later chapter to retirement. Hi, I'm Lisa. This is Retirement Countdown 1000, and I am counting down the last 1000 days from work to retirement and asking myself all the questions that I have about retirement here in front of a camera so that maybe I can help you too. So, when you think about questions that are common in retirement, these are the things that pop up most when people talk about it on the internet. First is the idea of rewarding yourself with that new sports car or maybe luxury vehicle. For couples, it's a question of should we downsize from 2 cars to 1 car and what would that mean? The idea of what happens when you can't drive but you're still independent. And then finally, how to know when to turn over the keys. And I apologize for that fly. I think it's going to be here with us this whole video. So the first question is, should I reward myself with that new sports car, that new luxury vehicle when I retire? This has been something I've been dreaming about all my life. I have this pool of money. Now this is my chance to do it. And there's 2 answers to that question. One is if you are quite wealthy, if you have millions saved for your retirement, and this has been a dream of yours, by all means, do that if that's really going to make you happy. But for most people, cars are an expense. They're a drain on our wallet. They're not something that we should think of in terms of enjoyment or pleasure. We should think in terms of functionality. And we should really start planning in retirement, if we haven't already, about keeping the same car for a long time. So you might buy a new car as you're heading into retirement, or a new for you car because you want to have something a little bit more reliable. But you need to think about whether or not you want to do something that's going to break the budget. So seriously sit down, look at the costs, make a rational decision. And if you've always just wanted to have a sports car, or you've always just wanted a luxury vehicle, one of the suggestions I saw that I thought was a good idea is just think of renting one for a week or a month, or try several of them out. Yeah, it costs you a little bit for renting a car, and it seems silly to rent a car when you already own one, but it's a much less expensive way to live out that dream. And most studies show that after a couple weeks or a month, the enjoyment of that car goes way down. So enjoy it for a month while you rent it, and then move on to other things. The second thing is talking about couples, whether you should go down to 1 car or whether you should stay at 2. And there's a couple of things to really think of. One is just to really be mindful of what the average day in retirement looks like for you. Some couples have this idea that we're going to be together every day, all the time. And if you are, and that makes you happy, that's great. And yeah, why would you need more than 1 car if you're both going to be going and doing the same thing all the time? But that's not always the reality. I know I'm pretty independent. My husband's pretty independent. We have things we like to do together, but we also have independent hobbies. We have independent friend groups. We aren't always going to be going to the same place at the same time. So we need to make sure that we're aware of that. And so the question comes, if you're going to move to one car, how are you going to negotiate who gets the car when? A lot of times, if you had two cars, the persons who this is their car, they feel like they get dibs on it every time they want to use it. Or one person who is the more car dominant person may just automatically take the car when they want it. So you need to negotiate, you need to communicate, you need to think of what is going to work best for your relationship. Yes, it does cut your automotive costs in half, but it might take away some of your flexibility, your chance to get around and live life to its fullest. A workaround, and we'll talk more about this later, is making sure that you're living somewhere near some public transportation. When my parents retired to Florida, they moved into a house that was about 4 houses down from a fairly major road that had a bus stop. And when they downsized to one car, my mom found that she could get to a lot of the places she wanted to on the bus. She was able to take the bus in one direction and go to church, where she volunteered, spent quite a bit of time doing socializing there too. And in the other direction, she could go to a shopping center, and that shopping center had a bus transfer point where she could go to the beach, which was another thing she really wanted to do. What happens when you can't drive, but you're still independent? Sometimes there are people who still have the desire to go and do things. Physically, they're still able to walk, they're still able to plan, they're still able to go and get out there, but they're either not comfortable driving, or they're not comfortable driving at certain times of year when there tends to be snow if you live in a snow belt, or when there tends to be really heavy rain if you live in a rainy area, or maybe don't want to do anything ends after dark when they'd be driving in the dark, because driving in the dark gets kind of difficult. Then the question comes, do you just not go places? Not driving after dark's not a big deal in the summer. In our northern hemisphere, we're pretty far north of the equator, and we have long days in the summer. Its day starts early, it ends late. But come winter, there's just a really short window of bright time. And that can make your world just get a lot smaller. How do you get from place to place? Do you depend on your kids for a ride? As someone who just was in charge of taking her dad everywhere, I want to say, please don't do that. Your kids are still working. They will still have jobs. They will still have things that they need to get done. And while they're certainly glad to take you to an appointment here and there, for you to depend on them all the time is really not fair. So it's time to think about alternative systems. Like I mentioned before, think about public transportation. If you start using it early, if you start using it now, knowing how that bus works or how a subway car works is just as easy as driving. It won't be hard. If you wait until you can't drive anymore, you might hesitate to do that. But if you learn it now, it's a great way to get around. And unfortunately, I think Americans don't take advantage of public transportation, don't value public transportation as much as many other countries do. Also think in terms of walkability. Again, you might be able to walk, but you're uncomfortable driving. So if you have got a grocery store 2 blocks away, then you still have access to that. And finally, the last thing I want to talk about is thinking about when it's time to turn over the car keys. How will you know that it's time? Before you put a car through a bank window. One thing that I think is really important as we age is to take classes. I know various organizations offer driving classes for seniors. Sometimes it's done through your Department of Motor Vehicles. Sometimes it's done through something like AARP or some other organization. Take advantage of those and actually listen to them, critique yourself, and make sure that you are doing the best practices for driving. Make a list of your own criteria. When I know it'll be time to stop driving. Come up with that list now. Have that list. Hold on to that list. And then you will know when it's time to stop. It's so important to think about this ahead of time, because when it comes to the moment, you'll think you're just getting a little worse, a little worse, a little worse with driving, and it's hard to know when that's going to be. So set up your criteria, and when you hit that criteria, then you know it's time to turn over the keys. Remember that it's not only about you. I used to talk to my dad about driving and his driving getting worse. In fairness to him, he was never a great driver. He always was one that was a lead foot and kind of hot-headed when he drove. But he got worse as he got older. And he would say things like, he's like, I'm getting older. Well, I just want to live my life. If I die, I die. Okay, Dad, that's true. But what happens, fly, what happens if it is you doing like my grandmother-in-law did? You run over a sidewalk. What if that sidewalk that you run over isn't empty and the only thing you hit is a window? What if there's a family that's walking with this baby in the stroller and you hit and kill the dad or the mom or the baby or all of them? How would you feel the rest of your life if you did that and hurt somebody else? Sometimes we need to have that reality check-in and remind ourselves that, yeah, giving up our car does give up our freedom, but it's not just about us. It's also about public safety as well as our own safety. And finally, decide on a person that you can trust and listen to them. Talk to a friend, maybe a slightly younger friend, maybe a grandchild if you have a young adult grandchild. Often it's not good to have our kids because our kids push our buttons just the way we push their buttons. But someone that you can trust, who you can say, do you think I'm still a safe driver? And if they say, you know what, I really don't think you are anymore. I think it's time to stop. You'll listen to them. Driving is one of many things we need to think about in retirement. And I'm going to tell you in the next video what our plan is for where we're going to live and what we're going to do. But I'd love to hear from you. How do you plan to handle driving as you retire? What are the things that you're going to do when you just can't drive the car anymore? I'm Lisa. This is Retirement Countdown 1000, where we talk about questions that all of us can think about before retirement or even a little bit after retirement to make us have a more fulfilling golden final chapter. If you like this, please subscribe or like this and share it with others if you know of someone who could find this of value. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video where I will share our plans for where we're going to live in retirement.